So I'm not sure if everybody knows what birdwatch is, and I'm going to assume that maybe a lot of people don't. So what I did is I downloaded the clip. So I'm going to have a chance to show everybody the clip of that the Twitter used to kind of broadcast and explain what it is. So Allum, you're going to go away for a second. You'll be right back. Chuck, you're going to go away for a second. You'll be right back. And I'm going to go away. So hold on. Here we go. And back now. Did you guys get a chance to see that really clearly? That's wild, isn't it? Isn't that wild? They did it deliberately with whales because they wanted to catch they wanted to make it amusing so that people would think of it kind of innocently and innocuously, like, oh, they're just going to correct us about whales.
Well, it's the exact opposite of that. It's weaponizing communities and turning them into sort of enforcers of the regime's orthodoxies. This is exactly what totalitarian regimes throughout history have done. Soviet Russia, East Germany, China, they all relied on communities to act as, because how do you police an entire population? You need to decentralize it, you need to delegate it out at the most minute local level. And this is what Twitter is doing on a digital scale.
Yeah, and it's not just atheists, just so you know. I mean, the Taliban do the same thing. Basically, the old women inside the system are the.
I'm sorry, Chuck. I can't hear you that good. Could you just could you just bring up the mic to you? I guess maybe a little bit.
Sure. What about here? Does that work?
That works.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not just it's totalitarian systems of thought. It's not just atheist systems of thought. And the way to understand it is like the Taliban do this. And interestingly enough, all these repressive regimes, they do it. And what's wild to me is that they almost always first do it to women. And we don't think about this. It's like all this stuff with the various, control, but it's the old women inside the Taliban societies that basically beat up the young people and make sure that they conform. So it's not a religious thing. I think that's the important thing. It's a control thing. That's, it's not like, okay, so if we just don't have religion, we don't have a problem. Or if we have religion, we have a problem. It's actually a system of control that society set up. And it's not good. I mean, even the little eye bulging back and forth in the birdwatch thing, I mean, that's a little creepy, I thought. I mean, what do I know, right? So,
well, yeah, So somebody put up a kind of a comment and a question here. And before this scope began, we were actually talking about this, right? We were talking about Stasi, and I guess you're more academically familiar with it. And I'm very interested in it. And as I've been kind of pestering Jack Posobiec, I want to bring in Antifa at some point into that conversation because they've clearly become some type of an enforcement agent and a phalanx. So it looks like LRDEE, thank you so much for being here, says they did this in Austria during the Nazi regime, telling on your neighbors.
Yeah, and Mao's China did it, and the Stasi did it. There are actually two excellent articles in The Guardian, of all places. Give them a Google if you have the chance. One is called Experience, My Brother Spied on Me for the Stasi. That was published last year, actually. And another one published in 2013. China's Cultural Revolution, Son's Guilt Over the Mother He Sent to Her Death. So this is like a feature of almost every authoritarian regime, whether it's talk about game stuff. Yes, I will.
Do you want to just, now that I put out those comments, do you want to just fix your screen so that it's not isn't that cool? I wanted to let you know.
There we go.
And just jumping in here, and the goal here is actually to disrupt social relations. And the reason that we disrupt social relations is the broader network that we have of people that we communicate with, the more possible it is to get at the truth. And so when you disrupt social relations, then humans fundamentally can be controlled by, authority figures anyway. And, you just invite authoritarianism in your home, because then the state is allowed to create whatever the truth is. And it actually causes a neural degeneracy in the people underneath underneath these regimes, so that they're not able to process things with the same complexity. Because when you've got to talk to a whole bunch of different people and synthesize your views with them, that's actually great mental exercise.
Yeah, and I like what you were saying earlier as well about an incentive structure for psychopaths. I heard someone else talk about this recently. I think it was James Lindsay, but it's part of a wider trend. Like, all of these new language codes have been invented over the past 5 years to sort of like police speech in the workplace, police speech on college campuses. They're incentive structures for psychopaths, because the people who are going to take pleasure in using them to sort of punish and control their peers in their community are the people who are going to lack empathy, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is things start, with a hopeful, the thing is that, I think that the country has needed some reform as far as some of these things. But then what happens is the codes become so complicated that you can't even keep up with it. And so then now you sit in fear of creating an offense. And then you need to ask yourself what's really going on, because now it's definitely not trying to bring us together. I've worked with minority populations most of my career. I've worked mostly with Hispanic people. And my goal wasn't assimilation. I've always appreciated whatever their unique characteristics are. But the goal was kind of, whatever you want to call it, transcultural connection. We're all together. And the codes keep getting more complicated. Who can keep up? I mean, fortunately for me, I have a reputation, so people can't give me a hard time, right? But I'm inside the academy. The codes keep getting more and more complicated. And whenever you see that, that's all about control.
So Rising Serpent is here, and thank you so much for joining us, Rising Serpent. And I'm very interested in this. I didn't think about it this way. Perhaps I should be. And now that Chuck has introduced kind of the psychopath element into it, and if you want to explain that a little bit, because I just really learned what psychopath is actually. But let me just hold on for 1 second. But I want to make sure it's in the framework of also included within Rising Serpent. So I don't want to. We can address both of them separately. So Birdwatch's digital Antifa is, and it's something I want to include Jack Posobiec in, because he's operationally infiltrated them, as well as he has a good academic knowledge on their operations. So is Birdwatch digital Antifa?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the way to look at this is the way to look at Birdwatch is that it fits into this larger system of enforcing the orthodoxy of the day. And Antifa is allowed to riot for 150 days in Portland with only minimal criticism from establishment politicians and the media, and that's because they're not really a threat to the regime. They're enforcing an orthodoxy. And they're functioning much in the same way that the media believes or imagines the Proud Boys might operate, as sort of paramilitary thing that will punish political dissidents. That's what Antifa is actually doing, and they've been doing it for years now.
Well, so Adam, addressing the psychopath issue. So what is the primary characteristic of a psychopath is that devolution of empathy or anti-empathy. And that basically allows people who don't really care or need to connect to other people the ability to propagate lies. Because, I can't lie to you. I mean, I can tell you something that I believe is true, but may not be true. But I'd have a very, very difficult time lying to you. Psychopaths are really fundamentally different, and they're pretty untreatable. And they're a certain percentage of the population. So they sit out there, and I have a whole long I'm not going to do it, Adam. Don't worry. I have a whole long understanding of how they fit inside the evolution of societies because they have a place. Psychopaths are often, the ones who are your crazy warriors that you trot out, when the neighboring tribe is trying to kill everybody and they just go nuts on everybody.
So does this is this a digital recruiting tool for Antifa kind of type psychopaths?
Well, I think it could potentially be for anyone, but the thing is, the people who are in charge of it have a particular set of viewpoints. So if there are psychopaths on the right, they are not going to be incentivized by this because they're not going to be rewarded for reporting CNN for misinformation, right? Whereas the psychopaths who are part of the left-wing tribe, they will be rewarded for reporting Breitbart News or Jack Posobiec for misinformation. So that's the incentive structure they've created. I think the only way you disincentivize people across the board is if you're equally intolerant of psychopathic behavior or going back to Antifa, political violence across the board. But that's not happening. Some people are being incentivized and some people are not.
Well, and it's also really difficult, to just look at a behavior other than it's easy to look at the extremes, of course, right? And we can see, the Portland occupation. We can look at what happened in the Capitol building. We can understand that, but understanding intent of behavior is also really important because you can look at Birdwatch and say all these people are asking me to do is fill out a survey, and I do that 100 times a day on Twitter. Somebody says, well, is spaghetti rising or falling in popularity, right? It's the intent underneath that you have to understand. And then also, is the intent really understood? Because somebody comes and says, hey, we're going to make this community building tool. Let's police the community, right? Well, community watch is actually a good thing, but it's not scalable. Because if you have a neighborhood watch inside your own community, there's like 50 people, right? And you're looking to see if there's a burglar or something like that. But if you have somebody in the community that's lying about the burglar and always calling the cops out, you figure out who they are and then you're knocking on their door. It doesn't scale to these communities of millions of people. In fact, what it does is it turns into what we're talking about, which is a control mechanism for various, warriors in the culture battles in the United States.
So